Jodi Miller, welcome to my podcast. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
I have known you, I feel like, for about 15, maybe not quite 20 years. We met at, it was like a house party, but it was like a fancy house party. I think there was like a valet and like,
It was in the Hollywood Hills.
and I think at the time, Facebook was like the only real social media, and we connected on there. And then I've just been, up all in your business ever since about everything that you're doing. My first question for you is, I mean, you're a comedian, but what is the difference between being a comedian and being a performer?
So I think there's a great difference between, being a comedian and being a performer. I think some people are literally born a comedian. Like they have something to say, they take to the stage. That's really what they want to do. They live, breathe, eat it all the time. I have a lot of friends that I look at them, I was like, oh, you were born to be a comedian. Not meaning that they're not going to do other ththings. Most, you can't just be a comedian, you know what I mean? Whether you are author, also an actor or an author, or, you write screenplays or television shows. It's rare this day and age that somebody's just a comic, but I believe some people were born comics. I was born a performer, meaning that from, the time I was little, that's all I wanted to do, whether it was acting. I started out singing. I never wanted to be a comic. It wasn't even on my radar. I only did it to further my acting career because a producer, mentioned that I had really good timing and that I should take classes on it. So I did only to further my acting career. And for some reason, that's the part of, my career that took off in a way. And I'm not even saying took off at that time. It was just, I was waiting for auditions, but with stand-up, you get to decide how much or how little you want to perform. You're really in control of your career. So I liked that. So it kept me really creative until other things came along. And if it wasn't for stand-up, I wouldn't have become a writer, a producer, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm a director. I'm incredibly grateful for it because it opens so many doors. And I love it. I do love it. But at the end of the day, I definitely consider myself more a performer, meaning that there's so many things I love to do.
Yeah.
It's not just that, you know what I mean? But it's definitely in my DNA now. I've been doing it so long that it's a part of who I am for sure. But
In your opinion, then, when you say some people were definitely born to be born a comic, who in out there would you say is that person?
I mean, you can look at some of the greats, obviously, if you look at, I mean, some of the when I don't mean great, like they're better than others, just people that are so well known, like a Jerry Seinfeld, definitely meant to be a comedian. Absolutely. I mean, he's not a great actor, as we know, but he's an amazing comedian and he can host and all of that. Even Ellen DeGeneres, my best friend, Eliza Schlesinger, she does everything. She's a great actress too, and a great writer. But I mean, from the moment I met her, she was, put on this earth to definitely be a comedian. She just had something different than what I had, not better or worse. It was a different drive. You can tell it right away, I feel like. Do you know what I mean? And then you could see other people that, not just, maybe are a performer, but were actors that all of a sudden want to try stand-up comedy, which, whatever, if that's what you want to do. It's not as easy as people think, for sure. I think, everybody can get on stage and they have something funny to say, but I think it's funny that the industry has shifted so much in regards to what makes someone a star, quote unquote. I mean, looking just at the comedy clubs, you used to, work really hard, eventually get passed at clubs. And then once you were a regular at clubs, you could get on a television show,
Yeah.
some sort of, notoriety. But nowadays it's like you can have, 1 million followers on TikTok. Oh, you can get passed at this club. You can be a regular now. It's all about, everything has shifted. It's not, and I'm not saying the clubs that I'm, the clubs that I'm a regular at still really take pride in the art form of it and the talent. But I know there are other clubs around the country that book people solely on their followers. And that's unfortunate. Look, it's the way it is now. But those people, didn't put the time in, and they don't, they're not, it's unfortunate because there are much better comics out there that can't get that, that spot because somebody else with more followers is getting it.
Yeah. And that's kind of the same with, I find that with my actor friends, like
Yes.
people want to know how many followers they have.
Even for like commercial auditions, people, it's
Yes.
ridiculous.
It's so interesting nowadays because Emerson has a degree in comedy. They have a bachelor's that you in comedy, literally.
A lot of comics came from Emerson.
So I mean, there's a way to like spend 4 years learning it.
There is a way, definitely. Like, I taught stand-up comedy for many, many years, and I picked up my class again during the pandemic. I still privately coach some people. There is a way to write a joke for sure. I mean, we all know that. And I've worked with a lot of people that have had, no stage experience, lots of stage experience. So, performance experience. And some people are just, again, like naturally funny and born with it. And some people can be taught how to sort of be funny on stage, but if they're a really good writer. Do you know what I mean? I've definitely
Yeah.
worked with a lot of people that through the years took my class, performed for a couple of years, but were always better writers and really did not like performing, and eventually transitioned over, to work on television shows,
Yeah.
write films. And that's great. I think it's great that I don't have a problem with people wanting to do stand up and trying stand up. I worked with so many people that some of them were just like, it's on my bucket list. And I thought that was great because it's such a scary thing to do. You're so vulnerable.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's actually, public speaking is the number one fear. Like, death is number two. So it's try to make people laugh on top of that. It's even more difficult. And for people to have that exhilaration, that rush, that first show, which is, in my opinion, almost always an amazing show because the gods bless you, the comedy gods. I really believe that. So to watch somebody experience that was always very rewarding for me. And even if they never do it again, they did it. And a lot of people can't even do it. So yeah, I think you can teach people the art of comedy and how to do it. You know what I mean? Maybe you're not going to be, again, you have to have that natural talent to keep it going, but you can definitely be taught some of the rules. And then by the way, there's an exception to every rule. I hate the classes that are like, you can only do it this way. You should only do it that way. Comedy is very subjective. What some people laugh at, other people are not going to laugh at. So there really are no rules. You know what I mean? So yeah.
That's why like certain comedians, people gravitate towards more than others because you can relate to them.
Yes.
One of the reasons I feel like I love watching you is because you as a woman, you have a different eye towards things, towards men. You're a mom now, motherhood also.
And in my opinion, the best comics are the ones that are relatable to everyone, all different ages, and then my special, like, I obviously talk about being of a certain age, being a woman, being a mom, dating stuff. I find it, it's still relatable to people in their 20s up to people in their 80s. You know what I mean? Because I'm talking about stuff that you can still appreciate as like, oh, that's hilarious. You know what I mean? Or, oh my God, I've experienced that. And I think that's some comics apart from other comics. You know what I mean?
Well, that type of humor, like, it's funny. I had to see if you were on Wikipedia, and of course, I found a little profile on you there, and there was a little subhead saying style of comedy, observational. But I'm like, isn't for the most part comedy observational?
It is interesting that they put that there, and I don't know who does my Wikipedia page. It just appeared one day, which I was like, oh, okay. I think they don't actually have a category for it, and I teach this in my class. There's two major types of stand-up, just the two types. It's observational and personal. And the most successful in my opinion, is personal. It's, if you look at all of the sitcoms that were created by stand-ups based on their life, from Seinfeld to Roseanne to Everybody Loves Raymond, to Drew Carey, to all of the great ones, Grace Butler. I mean, all of the ones, Margaret Cho at the time, like, they all did it. It's all based on their personal lives, because it really, paints a picture of who they are, and it makes them unique, and it's relatable, their life, their family life, all of that stuff. The other type of comedy is observational comedy. And it's kind of the easiest to do because we're doing it all day long. We're always observing things. We're always, when you call your friends up and you're like, oh my God, if I have to see one more, set of balls hanging from a truck. Like, I'm gonna kill like anything you like think of, you're doing an observation. You're up.
Yes.
That's why it's so relatable. And anyone can do that. And it's great. And the two most successful comics at that are Jerry Seinfeld and Ellen DeGeneres. And if you think about their comedy, they rarely talk about their personal lives, if ever. They make mention of it because they're the ones observing it, and they might be with their family when they're observing it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they don't really dive into their personal life. It's so, I think as a comic, your goal is kind of to, I would say, create a nice balance between the two. But the more personal you can get, the more unique you are. I always say that. Like, most comics in their 20s are almost all observational because they don't even really know who they are yet. And that's fine. I didn't know who I was when I was in my 20s, which is why all of my material was about dating and partying and like not having any money or whatever, but that's what I was experiencing at the time. And then as you get older, it starts to become more personal because you start acquiring more baggage in your life and more life experience. And then that's when it comes relatable. But when you make it personal, you really set yourself apart from the pack. Like, I adopted a child, and that makes me unique. You know what I mean? There's a lot of comics out there that are parents. I could just talk about having kids, which is also just a great experience. Everyone experiences is unique, but you don't hear a lot of comics. Obviously there's Kim Whitley, who also adopted a child. There's a lot of other comics that have talked about it, whether they're adopted or they've adopted, but it kind of sets you apart. Like, people will remember, oh, she adopted, as a single woman, she adopted a child. And I didn't do it, even though I joke about it, I didn't do it to have material. I tried to get pregnant on my own. And at that time, I was talking about it. I was talking about doing the IUI and going to my, fertility doctors and doing all of that stuff and getting inseminated and picking out sperm donors. That was all my material when that was happening. And that was also kind of unique, you know what I mean? But those were personal experiences. Everybody's experience, even though it's relatable, is a personal experience. You have experiences that only you really have. Other people might have very similar ones, but coming from you, you're talking about stuff that people are like, oh my God, that sort of sets you apart. So I always encourage people, when they're writing material, talk about something, even if you think it's not appropriate. You're in recovery, you got divorced, you're transitioning, you're whatever you think, oh God, I don't know if I should talk about it. You should definitely talk about it, because there's someone in the audience that has a similar story, and that's why we love comedy and we love connecting with that comic. You know what I mean? Because we're like, oh, they're going through what I'm going through in a different way. But yeah.
Yeah. That's so true. That's so true, because yeah, obviously there was so much about motherhood that I related in your stand-up, which again we will get to in a second, including being a mom and adopting, all of that good stuff. But before we get to the present, I wanted to just go a little bit back in time. So you were on America's Got Talent, and I remember sitting in my living room. I think there was like just the time of the DVRs at that time, and there you appeared on stage, and you slayed. I mean, you have that clip. Hopefully we'll be able to play it here over the podcast when we run it, so other people can see it if they haven't. But I also was in shock that when I was watching it and you were telling your story behind the scenes, how you were delivering groceries and all that stuff. And like, I didn't know any of that stuff. In my mind, you were already there, you were already established, you were already doing stuff. And in fact, in my mind, I was thinking, well, it's awesome she's on there, she's killing it, but like, isn't this supposed to be for people who are, just trying to get discovered? Like, Jodi's already discovered. So what was the impetus of all of that?
Well, I can tell you a little secret, and all your viewers a little secret, because it's not a little secret, because I've talked about it many, many times. It's a produced show. America's Got Talent is a very produced show. Those auditions that you see people waiting online, it doesn't happen. Those people are shot waiting online. And there is a possibility that one of those people will actually get through. But I had a very selective audition where a casting director who I was friends with submitted my tape. I heard back that they wanted to see me. I had a very private audition for 5 producers in a room. Very weird that I had to do comedy, just the same bit in front of them. I was immediately passed through. Those people that are passed through, we show up with other people, they have different days for it, and they make it look like it's one day. I had been doing comedy a long time. I've been doing military tours. I was, in fact, delivering groceries. I was also freelancing for a company in New York doing writing work. I wasn't like struggling. I wasn't doing great, but I was doing pretty good, but I was on the road a lot. So yes, my comedy was already doing well, which is, but I was not, I was an unknown, and social media wasn't big enough for me to have followers. So they were like, okay, she's unknown enough. And I, I was also told, like, oh, make it sound even worse. You know what I mean? You're starving. It's so depressing. I was like, I'm not though. They're like, you are. I'm like, okay, I am. So you play the game. You play the game, because as a producer, you know what I mean? As someone who knows the game, they want a backstory that people are going to attach on. If I was like, everything's going great and this is the next step, they would be like, no, thank you. I actually remember, because my mom had died less than a year, well, about a year. It would have been about a year. And I remember being like, should I talk about my dead mom? Because I was like ready to bring that up. And they were like, save that, save it. They literally produce it. Now, what I did on stage was not produced. Now, either you go on stage and, in front of the celebrity judges and the audience, and whatever happens, happens. You know what I mean? They know everybody, that they either bring people in that are purposely really awful or really great, or people that they're like, I think they're pretty great, but we'll see what happens. So it's very produced. Now, I went out, I was there all day. It was the longest day. There were 2 audiences. It was like the longest day. Thankfully, I was there for the first audience, but I was like told 5 minutes before, you're going up. I'd only seen the stage from like a corner. So I was like, well, where do I go? They're like, there's an X on the stage. It was very like rush, 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 rush. And I remember, you have 90 seconds. And I remember looking down for 1 minute, because I thought, fuck it, I'm taking a second to regroup, restack, you know what I mean? So that I can turn off the Jodi Miller and just become Jodi Miller. So I shut down, and I remember having a thought of my mom right before, like, it was like, literally, she was right there with me. And then I shot up, I looked right at Howard Stern, and I knew from the moment I opened my mouth, in the zone. And it didn't matter how many people were there, because I had performed for so many people. It's not like, oh my God, I wasn't nervous. I was ready to do it. You know what I mean? So it goes great. People are losing their shit. I come off stage. I knew a couple people that worked on the show. There's so many, oh my God, thousands of people that work on that show. So many people. I remember Wendy Liebman was there, who I'm friends with, and she was doing the next show, but she watched my audition. She was like, oh my God. And I was like, oh my God, you're totally different than me. So don't even you don't want to look at another comic and be like, shit, they just gave her a standing ovation. I'm not going to get in. I was like, you're going to kill it. It was pretty amazing. That day was one of those days that people dream about in Hollywood, where every person was like following you around, and they were talking to my manager, and they're like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. We got to prep her, and we got to get all of her social media on the same page. We're going to be doing live tweets with her. They were prepping me for something massive. And that felt great. I left that day. It was amazing. So you're waiting now for 2 weeks. They got to finish the auditions, and then the next, round is in New York, and I'm just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I'm texting my producer or calling her, and she's like, we just have to wait here. And I knew other comics that had auditioned that year too, that also got passed through. And one of them, I ran into him, and he was like, they just cut me. They just said, I'm not moving forward, even though I was moving forward. And I'm like, they can do that? And he's like, yeah. And then I started to panic, because I was like, well, they can't do that to me, because it was such a phenomenal, I had so many applause breaks, standing up, it can't happen. It just kept literally going back and forth with my producer, who's like, don't have any word yet. And then the day we were all supposed to leave for New York at 6 a.m, I got an email that said, I'm sorry, we're not moving forward with you. And I couldn't even, I remember I couldn't believe it. I was in such shock that I just was crying. And I think I cried for 2 weeks. Because in my mind, they were never going to air that audition. So it was it never happened, because they don't usually, if you don't move forward, they won't even air it. So, I was really fucked up. They really, it fucked me up badly. And it reminds you again that what this business is. My audience brought me out of that funk. I had maybe 2 weeks after that, I had a show in Irvine, the Irvine Improv. And I didn't want to go, but I went with a friend. She was like, come on, I'll drive you. And then we went, and I saw other comics, and it had spread in the comic community very quickly that I had a great audition, and I got cut. So that's, nothing had aired yet. So, but everybody was like, oh my God, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. I don't want to be here. And I remember they bring me up. It's like a sold out crowd in Irvine, and I get on stage and I take the mic out of this. I remember thinking, just do your set, go home and get back into bed. And I take the mic out. So I was on autopilot. I put it down and I say, hey. And I mean, the crowd was just like screaming. And then as soon as it died down, right at the moment it died down, this couple in the front just screamed, we love you. Like they had come to find out they had driven from like San Diego to see me. And they just screamed, we loved you. We love you. Right at that moment that so it kind of was funny. And it snapped me out of it for a second because everybody was laughing. I was like, oh. And then I look at them and I could tell they were so happy to be there. And I said, I love you too. And it hit me like, fuck those people. Fuck America's Got Talent. This is for me. They can never take this away from me. They can never take that moment away from me. They can never take that away. And these people are here to see me. And everything, my friend who was watching said, my whole body shifted and I just killed it. And then I got a call like a month later from the producers, like, hey, so your episode's going to air. And I remember being so confused. I'm like, no, you guys cut me. And she's like, well, I don't have any information about that, but your episode's going to, and then I got nervous. I was like, oh God, they can edit it any way they want. Are they going to make it look like I did really bad? So I was freaking out and I was trying to like get in touch with anybody that worked there. And I got in touch with one editor who didn't know I was cut. He just literally found me because he had worked on a project that I had worked on years prior. Like, I just edited your episode. You're unbelievable. He still doesn't know that I was cut. And I didn't tell him because I had signed an NDA at that time, which is expired. So that's why I can talk about it as much. So I just said, did you just use a little bit? He said, no, you're commercial to commercial, which means I'm the whole act. 6 minutes. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, it's unbelievable. So my manager was also really hesitant. We were all like freaking out. So I remember my dad is on the East Coast and I said, just please watch it, record it and call me after. And I remember I was on the 405, I'll never forget. And my phone just froze. It was shaking. It was tweeting the tweets. Things were happening to my phone that I didn't know could happen. And I was like, what's happening? I just started getting all these notifications. And that was just from the East Coast. And then my phone rang and it was my dad and he was crying. Oh. And he just was so like proud and it makes me want to cry. And it was an amazing moment to watch it again. It was also an amazing moment. I mean, I can't even tell you how many followers I got just from that. And that was just the beginning of Instagram and Twitter. I mean, like a massive amount of followers. But here is this amazing audition that is literally considered one of the best auditions LA had that year because I was put in the best of, they aired it twice. And they never even explained why I got cut. I found out later I got cut. This is through third party, but it's transcripts that took place in New York that the judges asked where I was. And one of the producers said, oh, she declined the contract. She didn't want to sign the contract. So they blamed it on me. I, of course, had another freak out. I knew two people that were working with Howie Mandel at the time. And I begged them to please tell Howie that is not the case. I did not back out of the contract. I did not want to, I just was like, it felt like a punch in the gut for the second time. And, water under the bridge now. And I'm friends with Howie Mandel. He's on the show that I executive produce, the game show. The funny thing is that a friend of mine auditioned 3 years later, and he was in the group of the comics, and they sent all the comics. They said, here's a couple videos. This is what you should do if you want to get 4 yeses from the judges. And one of them was mine for the comics. Like they used my clip to say, this is what you want to do if you want to wow the judges. It's such a, it's like, the reason that apparently they cut me, and I'll just say it is because they just didn't want 2 white Jewish women. It was me and Wendy Lieberman who she had a good audition, but they didn't even show her audition. They went with her, and I think they went with her because she was a mom. And I think they thought it'll be more relatable. Like I was at that time, early 40s, talking about being a cougar, a Jew girl. Like that was going to be my next set, was talking about that. And I think they felt that might be too risque, and they just didn't go with me. And it's unfortunate that they didn't let America decide. You know what I mean? I remember reading all of the tweets and the comments. Where's that girl? Where's that girl from the Cats and Dogs? It was everywhere. the weird thing is that after that, my life kind of fell apart. I like I lost my freelance job, and I was really just working for Instacart, and I was still doing okay. I was still working the road. It just my life was shifting in a lot of different ways. And then, a couple of years later, it changed again for the better, and it's been pretty great.
So after that episode aired, it's not like offers came in, because that's
Some did, yes, some did. Just from one episode, some
Yeah.
did. But what we really were hoping for, and I say we, my manager and I just needed to make it to the live show. Once you make it to the live show, your offer on the road can be much higher. Your pay.
Got it.
And I needed one more episode, which I would have definitely gotten to the live shows. That's all. I didn't even need to win this thing. I didn't even need to make it to the semifinals.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that like maybe 3 years later, 4 years later, could have been 4 years later, I think, Global's Got Talent, which I guess owns all of the, America's Got Talent, Britain's Got Talent, all that
I
stuff.
see.
On Facebook, like grabbed it and featured it. I didn't know this. And I was working on the game show, and one of the PAs was like, "Oh, you're trending right now." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, he'd never seen it the first time.
Yeah.
Younger dude. And I go, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Oh my God, your video's everywhere. My friend just sent me a video." And I'm like, "I work with her." I'm like, "What? Your dog and cat video?" And I looked, the first time it aired, I forget how many millions of views it had, millions and millions and millions. The second time Global picked it up, it was like another 41 million views.
Wow.
And all of these shares. And it's funny because every time I post it on anything, it immediately blows up like hundreds of thousands up to 1 million views. The only place that doesn't do well for some reason, even though people lip sync it, is TikTok. TikTok hates me. I can't figure out that algorithm. I have a social media person trying to help me do it. It's like they just don't like me. That's the thing. People with 1 million TikTok subscribers will get work everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, how is this happening when we're working so hard on our craft?
Speaking of that, just before we dive into motherhood, there's something I'm dying to know about, which is the tours that you did in Afghanistan. That fascinates me so much because Hollywood was kind of built on that, with Bob Hope doing that, and to me, I imagine, I mean, I'm Ukrainian and there's a war raging in my country. And I have spoken to and interviewed lots of military personnel, people who have been in the colonies and have since been released after capture. It's the stories are harrowing, and speaking to them is an inspiration. But you are there to make troops laugh. And is that life-changing? Because I know just me talking to people in Ukraine really changes my heart forever. And what was that like for you?
I mean, it's amazing. I've done, I did military tours before I went to Afghanistan, but they're in not like non-war zones. So it's not, you're still just entertaining the troops, but you don't feel that pressure and that stress of what they're going through. And then when we went to Afghanistan, it was a 3-week tour. We went to Kyrgyzstan and Afghanistan, and it was brutal. It was the summer, it's 125 degrees. You had to wear like jeans and like a long shirt when you're on the choppers, and, helmet and all of that stuff. But it was incredibly rewarding to go to these small little FOBs, which are the tiny little remote bases, and perform for these men and women that are just doing the most amazing selfless thing they can do for our country. And it didn't even matter what we said. They just were so happy we were there to entertain them. And like it was a little piece of home talking about stuff, and then we would hang out with the troops after and talk to them. And it's funny because they just were like, "What movies are out? What movie did you see?" Like, they just wanted to talk about stuff like that, about, the comforts from home. And it was also very, there's one of the hospitals on the base, Leatherneck, is, there's bastions on the other side, which is the British Army. And so it's like connected. And we went into the hospital to talk to some troops, some soldiers that were being sent home. And I remember we walked in, and there was maybe, God, it was like he was 10. I can't remember, between 8 and 10, a little Afghan boy who had like 3rd-degree burns and like his arms or whatever. Apparently I can't even say it's a third world country. It's like the Middle Ages, like the underdevelopment of it all. You're just shocked. So in a lot of these like homes, they have a fire pit running all the time, and the eldest child sits outside at night to like man the fire. And he's a kid and he fell asleep and fell into the fire pit. So he was brought to this hospital because the parents didn't know what to do with him. They have other kids. They just let the soldiers take him to treat him, but they weren't there. And he was screaming and scared. And all these British and American doctors were, and I remember we walked in, and I mean, I just started crying. And this poor child didn't have his parents. They didn't want to be there. They wouldn't have come there for him. I'm like watching him. I'm watching our soldiers, our Marines. And it just was really, we're very fortunate living here and not seeing that on a daily basis. That, it was very eye-opening. It was very, we went there for 3 weeks. And, you decompress apparently on the way back in Kyrgyzstan, but we like actually volunteered at like an orphanage and we're doing stuff. But when I got home, I mean, I was messed up for a couple months, and I wasn't even in war. Like I was in the zone, but I wasn't.
Yes.
It's just really, you're just like, oh my God.
Yeah. That's how I felt like when I was talking to some of the soldiers that were, traded. I mean, like, I'm not there. I didn't see any of the atrocities, but just talking to them, I felt like I had some type of PTSD, and like I would go outside and see like people walking down the street, sunny LA, and minding their own business, having a great, and I just wanted to be like, don't you know what's going on? Like, what? You have no idea what's out there. And like, I just wanted to shake people and just be like, wake up.
Comedy is so therapeutic. And I worked again, with a lot of military, ex-military, and they had PTSD, and we talked a lot about it. And to bring humor to it sort of diffuses that. Using, comedy heals, and, talking about it in a way that's not going to be super depressing, but is kind of hilarious in certain ways. It's just, adding comedy to something that's tragic. That's why they say tragedy plus time equals comedy. That's why they say that. It's just true. I joke about my mother's death, and a lot of people joke about the death of someone or an addiction, or like the worst times of their life, because that helps you heal. If you don't talk about it, you don't heal. And a lot of people with PTSD don't want to talk about it because it brings up somebody. But if you talk about it with sort of a humorous take, if you add a little humor to that, find a way to add the humor to it, it actually becomes less and less and less traumatic slowly over time, because you're actually talking about it. And that was like a huge thing when I was talking to this one Marine there. And when I came back, and I don't know if it was the universe giving me, like, it just seemed like every class after that, I had somebody that was in the military there. So it was kind of like an amazing thing. But it's life-changing. But having said that, I remember when we were in Kyrgyzstan talking about, like, oh my God, like we're so like at it. And they said, you're going to feel kind of, this way for maybe a month, maybe 2. They go, but before you know it, you'll be irritated again that you're waiting so long at Starbucks for your coffee. Because this is where we grew up. And, I think about that. When I became a mom, everything upset me. Everything upsets me. Seeing a homeless person on the street upsets me because they used to be somebody's baby. I want to help everyone. I don't just think about, obviously, and I'm Ukrainian, Russian Ukrainian. I mean, I think about that. I think about the war. And then I think about children starving in Kenya or another place. Like, I think about people that don't have clean water around the world. I look at my daughter, I'm like, what if she couldn't drink water? You know what I mean? I look at pictures of these children that are orphans and in another country, and it's the world is so fucked up. I used to watch, I mean, I still kind of watch some of them, but I used to watch all the true crime serial killer, and I can't watch this. It's like my daughter ruined my favorite shows because now everything makes me cry. I've got to watch like teen dramas so that I'm just like light and easy, because if not, I'll just cry.
Well, there's always Dora the Explorer and Elmo, and you can just go to baby Einsteins or little Einsteins. And
Oh,
yes, those.
she got Miss Rachel and Blippi, which are the newer ones. That we just love. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about your daughter. I feel like I'm following you on social media. Things are, you're doing your thing, your observational comedy, your some personal stuff. And then all of a sudden, like one day you're like, hey, this is my daughter. Like, hey, meet Mackenzie. And I was like, what? And especially because your comedy, you're always talking about being single
Yeah.
And your special, which we'll get to, you talk about being single in your 20s and then in your 30s and
Mhm.
then your 40s. And so
40.
like there's this through line about being single. And then all of a sudden baby appears. And so and in the middle of COVID, like
Yeah.
COVID on top
Yeah.
of that. So I'm assuming the process started before COVID.
I had been trying to get pregnant on my own. I mean, I made a decision a long time ago that I was going to be a mom, whether I found the one or not, because there's an
Yeah.
expiration date on that, as we all know. And
Yeah.
I wanted both. I still believe I'm going to have both. It's just, as my special, when I talk about my special, everybody does everything on their own timeline. You don't know that when you're young. You think I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then the universe and life is like, no, you're going to do it totally different, which is fine. You just have to sort of like let go of that control and let it happen. So I was trying to get pregnant on my own, my very early 40s after my mom passed, because that was a huge regret that I had, that I didn't. Not that she ever pushed me. My dad has always been the one that's like, I want a grandchild. My mom never pushed any of that,
Mm.
marriage or anything. Whenever you're ready, you're ready. And then she passed young, and youngish, she was 69. And I thought, wow, she never got to see me get married. She never got to meet a grandchild. And I just was like, this is the time. I don't have much time left. So I tried to get pregnant on my own with a fertility doctor. And we were just doing IUI at the time, which is less invasive than IVF, but he felt like it should work and it didn't. And then we'd done, a few cycles, like 6 months worth. And then I did the military tour in Afghanistan. Oh no, I'm sorry. I did another military tour, different one, which was not, well, we went to Honduras, Guantanamo Bay. That was a super fun tour. But when I came back, everything had sort of shifted. My follicles, my eggs, everything was weird. And then he was like, I think it's time to explore other options like IVF or embryo adoption, which is where you carry an embryo, which was is a very viable thing because women can carry babies into their 60s, which I didn't know, but your uterus doesn't age the way your ovaries do. So these were all options, and my head was kind of spinning. And so I decided one round, I'll pull eggs and we'll do one round of IVF. So he put me on the steroids, all the shots, the hormones, sorry. And then I got the call that I was going to be on America's Got Talent. So I gained a little bit of weight from that. So I stopped. I thought, okay, that's the reason I didn't get pregnant. I'm supposed to be on America's Got Talent. So I stopped taking everything so I could shed some weight. And I got on America's Got Talent, and then everything kind of happened, and I was in that deep depression. And I was like, I got to put this on pause, even though I knew time was not on my side, but I put it on pause. And I kind of let it go. And then I started working on the game show, and a friend of mine and her wife.
What's the game show? I know you've referenced it a few times. Let's give it a name.
It's called Funny You Should Ask.
All right.
We're starting season 7, coming up. It's called Funny You Should Ask. So here's an amazing story that I think you're going to be amazed by it, and your listeners will be too. So a really good friend of mine started working on the show. I mean, we were more of acquaintances at the time. She's a comic, but now we're very good friends. She started working on the show as a writer, and I was the head writer at the time. I'm now the executive producer, but I was the head writer at the time. And she started working, and she told me that her and her wife she had to let me know, and our boss let us know that they had just entered the foster to adopt system, which means that they could get a baby at any time. They don't know what age, they don't know, they could just get a call, whatever. And then they did. Like 2 weeks later, she got a call, newborn baby boy. So she took her maternity leave. Lennon was adorable. He's so cute. But when you foster to adopt, they try to do reunification with the birth mom. That's their goal, the courts. But this birth mom happened to be very young. So it was a lot of ups and downs. I was watching them go through it. It's like, imagine having your daughter, and then a year later, they're like, now we have to take your daughter away. Thanks for raising this little baby for a year, but we're going to give her back to the mom who's in recovery or picking herself. We don't know, there's lots of different reasons. So I watched her emotional roller coaster and thinking, I don't think I could do that. Even though I was actually like, maybe I would do a foster. I would adopt a little bit older, but you can't just adopt a little bit older. You have to go through the foster system, which is anyway. So I just was like, as a single person, I couldn't survive that if I raised a baby for a year and they took the baby away. I wouldn't survive it. So I thought, I think I'm gonna adopt. I remember actually seeing a documentary about that, and I just was like, I'm just gonna. My friends, two of my friends, Michael and Tony, they adopted this little girl. So they gave me their lawyer's number, their agency's number. It happened very fast. December 2019. Well, November 2019 into December is when I got into the system. I started basically, then you put together a profile, you get all your reference letters, you take these courses, your home study courses, and then they send you birth mom possibilities. And I remember the first birth mom possibility they sent me, she was out of Texas. She had like 7 children, all adopted out. She was a prostitute. I'd taken all the classes. I didn't mind that she was a prostitute. I didn't mind that she sometimes did drugs, because alcohol is worse than any drug you put in your body when you're pregnant. It's unbelievable. And like, it's like alcohol, fetal, like that's the worst thing you can do to a baby in utero out of all the drugs. Like the other drugs don't affect it. Anyway, it's crazy. People don't know that. Anyway, so that didn't bother me. But then I found out she was HIV positive, even though none of her last 2 births, those children were not. But I thought, I'm not going to risk it. So I remember that I passed on that. And then like, I didn't get anything for a couple of months. It was taking very long. Then the pandemic hit. And I remember like texting my lawyer, and he's like, well, it's just, things are a little slower. And he didn't say this, but on the pecking order of things, it goes straight couple, gay couple, single woman, single guy, as far as what birth parents, birth moms, when they look at packets of potential people, even if they're an addict, they still sort of have their own, like, I don't want this person. So I wasn't even getting a lot of like possibilities compared to my other friends who were in the system that were getting birth mom possibilities like 3 or 4 a week.
It's like social media.
It's like dating. It's not like online dating. I joke about it, but it really is. Like, you're like, Jesus Christ. So right, I mean, 6 months before I got my daughter, I did get a call from him. He's like, I have a great possibility. This woman's in Oregon, and she's just like really poor, and I think she did some drugs, but not a lot, but she really poor. She's open to gays and singles. That's what he said. He's like, I think we have a really good shot at this. And she's being induced in a week. I was like, oh, in a week? Usually you've got a month. But I was like, okay. He's like, send me your packet right now. So I sent it. It was a Thursday, and I didn't hear anything. And then the agency called me on Friday. They're like, did you hear from your lawyer? And I was like, no. And then I call my lawyer, and he's like, let me check with her lawyer.
Okay, but wait, but so far, if somebody were to just drop down this conversation, they could very easily think that your packet is your audition tape and you have to send it in because there's the agency and there's the lawyer.
Oh yeah, totally. People are like, was she auditioning for a role? Yes, you're auditioning for the role of mother. It's an ongoing role. It never ends. You never get canceled. It's always getting picked up for new seasons, lots of spinoffs. So my lawyer's like, I'm going to call her lawyer. And then he sends me this text that I'm sure was very hard for him to send, but he said, so her lawyer said she will not consider anyone with a Jewish background. In this, I go, what? I literally was like, unfortunately, the birth mother will not consider anyone with a Jewish background. And my gut response was to say, you tell that white trash bitch that only someone with a Jewish background could afford that fucking child. Because it's expensive, by the way, to adopt. It is expensive as hell. I use all my savings. I was like, but of course I just responded with, wow. And he's Jewish, and he's like, I know, it happens. And I'm thinking, this young girl in Oregon, like it still was so shocking to me. So you'd consider gays and singles, but not Jewish. So, okay. So that was like 6 months. So then I considered getting a surrogate because I was like, it's not going to happen.
So back to the drawing board. That was it.
Well, that was, yes, that was
for
like
that.
6 months.
Yeah.
That was it for that. So I'm thinking about, using a surrogate, all of that. And it was a Sunday night in January 31st. I was doing my podcast, and I got off my podcast and I see a text message from my lawyer. Great possibility, just emailed it to you. That's what he always says. I looked at it. I looked it over. I just looked at her health background, everything, meth addict, but has a lot of kids. They've all been healthy. Nothing in her health background, her family, no cancers, all that. So I was like, all right. right. Okay. Submit. Like, go take a shower. I go on the couch. I'm binge watching at this time. I'm in season 3 of Gilmore Girls, and I'm sitting there with a bowl of whipped cream on a Sunday night, and my phone rings. So it was like 2.5 hours later, and it was my lawyer. And I remember thinking, because it happened like almost every time I sent that packet, which is a massive PFD, oh my God, PDF, massive PDF. I'm thinking, oh, it didn't go through. And I got to get up off the couch and resend. So I picked up and I go, hey, and I didn't hear him. It was like a weird silence. I go, David? And he just goes, you were selected. And I go, for what? He's like, Jodi, your daughter was born this morning. You need to get on a plane tomorrow and go to Kentucky. And then like, I remember almost passing out because I couldn't hear anything for a second. Your body goes into shock.
Yeah.
And my knee-jerk reaction was, this isn't your baby. It's too soon. What do you mean? Like, you told me I'd have 3 months. What's happening?
I'm not ready.
I wanted to be, yes, I wanted to be in the delivery room. I wanted to meet the birth mother. I want like all of these things. And I remember pacing in my living room and he said, okay, I know everything that you're feeling right now because David Radis, by the way, shout out, is the baby rainmaker. He's been in this industry so long. Everyone knows David Radis. It's crazy how many babies he's like found for, amazing parents. So he's like, Jodi, I know this is the most stressful way it can happen. It is the most stressful way. He goes, but it's also the best way. She's not backing out. This is her 13th pregnancy. He's like, you need to get everything in order and get on a plane. And I'm like, he goes, but just so you know, if you get there, because they never gave me her like full health background, they didn't give me like the health of the baby or anything. I could back out if I got there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a fit. So I remember calling my dad. He had the same reaction. This isn't, I thought you were going with a surrogate. What's like, I don't know. Do you know anything about this birth mom? She did math. And I was like freaking out. So the next day I had to get like my fingerprints done again, my life scan, everything. I like get on a plane, throwing up all the way to Kentucky. It was like I was in labor. I remember talking to the doctor when I got there. I was throwing up. I was like feeling so sick. I was dizzy. I get there. I'm by myself. You can't go with anyone. All of my friends were like, I want to go with you. You couldn't. I was the only one allowed in the hospital because of
COVID. Yeah. Wow.
I get there. Big thing. They're like, wait, are you the adoptive mother? Like what's, and then, all the forms and everything from the agencies. And I was like, I don't know. And then I walk in there. My baby was a preemie and she was 4 pounds, 7 ounces. So she was very healthy. She just needed help feeding, but not anything else. But she was in a little incubator from one day. And I walked in and I remember I collapsed in the nurse's arms and I was crying and she was like, that's okay, cry. And I just was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. I don't know anything. And I remember I did like the skin to skin and I held her and I was just sort of like thinking, am I supposed to know that this is my daughter? I don't know what I'm supposed to know. And I remember putting her back in there and I had to go check into the hotel. And, babies can't, when they're born, they can't see anything like unless it's right in front of their face. And she was sleeping the entire time. And I got really close to like the little incubator. And I just said, I'll see you tomorrow. And her eyes fucking darted open and she locked eyes with me. And I just started wailing, crying. And as I was walking out of the hospital, I called my dad and I said, that's my daughter. And it all just hit me like a ton of bricks. Oh, that's my daughter. And then the next year of my life was fucking crazy. It was really hard becoming a mom like that and doing it by yourself and all of that. But okay. So fast forward, Mackenzie and I living our best lives. Boop, 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 boop. She's amazing. She's like the best child in the whole world.
How old is she now?
She's 2.5.
Okay.
2.5. Yeah, 2.5. She'll be 3 in January. So it was November of last year, November. We have an open adoption, me and the birth mom. So I email her pictures of Mackenzie. And I really love Vicky. That's her name. I joke about her on stage. She really had the worst life. We talk about having a great life. She had the worst life. And she's been pregnant many, many times in her life since she was 15. She's a meth addict, but she really is a good human and a funny human. And I always feel so bad that she was never adopted because she's a good person.
Yeah.
So, she sends the things that Mackenzie are going to want to hear. She sends things like, I'm so happy you're her mommy. I love you both. You're an angel. Thank you for, being the best mom to her. Like it's what Mackenzie's going to want to see when she's older.
Yeah.
So we're emailing back and forth. I'm wishing her happy Thanksgiving. And she says, guess what? I'm preggo again. And I was like, I got like that full body panic because I knew early on that she loved me and that she told her caseworker that if she did get pregnant, even though she doesn't want to get pregnant again, she's asked to get her tubes tied. That's a whole nother podcast. But I knew that she would want me to adopt this child. I knew it. And she did. And I was like, I can't be outnumbered. First of all, I'm too old now. And also, yeah, I can't like that. It almost killed me. I had to get a night nurse. I thought I was going crazy mentally. And like, it was nuts. So I said, Vicky, I can't adopt that child, but I know couples that are looking to adopt again, that have already adopted. And my first thought was Michael and Tony, who had referred me because they were looking to adopt again, but they had just gotten their second daughter and they were like, oh, I was like, oh, wow. And then my friend Jess, who I started talking about at the very beginning of this conversation,
Yes, that's right. Coming back around full circle now.
Her mom had passed away maybe 4 months earlier from cancer. And my mom obviously died of cancer too. So and she works, on my show. And I reached out to her to see how she was doing. And something in my head, because I knew that she had mentioned once that her and her wife were looking to adopt again, but I was like, it's too soon. She just lost her mom. Her son is almost 4. Like, I know they want to adopt again. They don't want to do foster to adopt because it was too stressful. So I just said, hey, this might be too soon. You can tell me to fuck off. But Mackenzie's birth mom is pregnant again. And if you guys are looking to adopt again, it would be a done deal. All Vicky has to say is, I want that couple. And you cut through everything I went through for a year and a half of no. And she was like, wow, okay, let me just talk to my wife and we'll get back to you. And then it just sort of happened. Cut to March 17th, 2023, baby Shy was born and my friends adopted him, my daughter's half brother, and they live 6 minutes from us. They live around the corner. He is almost 5 months now. And the cutest thing, he looks a lot like his sister, and they all get to grow up together. Isn't that amazing?
That's an amazing, amazing story.
I made that shit happen. I remember I remember when I was emailing with Vicky and thinking, I don't care who it is. Her brother is going to be raised in California. She doesn't know any of her half siblings. It's going to be hard for me to track them down eventually. She's going to want to meet some of them. There were 2 that were adopted before her, which was an open adoption, but I can't get that information.
Yeah.
But I was like, this child, she will know her half brother. So Lennon's almost 5 now, but he's 4.5. His brother Shy is like 5 months and Mackenzie's 2.5. So they're all 2 years apart. And it's the cutest thing.
Like, do you feel so accomplished having done it's probably like the biggest move you could ever make in someone's life.
It's so many things had to happen for this to happen, but they were supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Jess was supposed to work at Funny You Should Ask. They were always meant to, obviously foster their first son and then adopt him.
Yeah.
I saw that process. It really is what made me want to adopt. I adopted, and then the birth mom got pregnant again. And so many things had to happen for that to happen, for me to get turned down by every birth mom. I didn't even get them in. So Vicky and I could develop a relationship, me and the birth mom, that she trusted me. She did. And then once they did, the adoption went through because they had to spend a month there because Shy was a little bit more preemie than Mackenzie and a little underweight. He was about 4 pounds. He's so totally healthy too. They're both incredibly healthy, but so they actually got to spend a little bit more time with Vicky, the birth mom. And Vicky sent me maybe the nicest email, just like, I can't thank you enough for introducing me to Nikki and Jess, because now I know that 2 of my babies will grow up near each other, knowing each other. She's like, you brought more love into my life than anyone. Because they love her. I love her. She's an addict. So we keep that in mind, but we still love her and we let her know how much we love her. And she's given us, the most amazing gifts. So we're all interconnected.
How can you not believe in something bigger than yourself? Because of all of those things had to happen. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my God, it's so funny. People say that all the time. People that we work with on the game show were like, oh my God, are you like supplying all the writers with babies? I mean, it's so funny. And then I had someone else, they were like, okay, so if she isn't, I mean, she gives, I mean, her children are all stunning. We did actually track down about 4 of them because Nikki's wife is like a sleuth. It's just one of those things that you don't realize. You know, some people would write off, oh, she's an addict or whatever. I'm like, and then I hear, you know, her story. I didn't even need to hear her story to just know that we're not all born. She was born to 2 addicts. She was abused her whole life. She was dropped off at Child Protective Services. She had a terrible life. But even if she didn't have a terrible life and she became an addict, it whatever. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, she's
Yeah.
still a human being and she deserves love. And
Yeah.
you know, she also doesn't want to be pregnant. It's not like she wants to do it. It's not like she's doing it for the money. She gets like, you know, that's another thing. They get like nothing
Yeah.
compared to what the agencies make. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous what they make.
Yeah.
That's a whole other topic too. But yeah, anyway, so that's the story.
Wow, that's incredible. And so much of it is in your special, like not this part, but like other parts. So let's get to the special because you've been so generous with your time, and I feel like the special is really going to be something special. First of all, I haven't set foot in a comedy club since way before COVID, and you performed at the Ice House in Pasadena, which is super historic. And I was so blown away. I related to so much of everything that you did, but then I also got a chance to see how specials are made because you did 2 shows, which I'm assuming will be spliced together in one. So first of all, tell me, like, how do you know it's time to have a special? How do you know, like, you've waited this long, right? You could have done it sooner, but you didn't. So and why is it so important for comics or you to get to this point where you want to do a special?
I mean, I was ready to do it a long time ago. I did an album like I don't know, 8 years ago, 6 years ago, or 8, 6, I can't remember now. But I couldn't do a special because I didn't have the money to produce it and I didn't have a production company that wanted to do it with me. Not that I wasn't ready. And then right before COVID, it was the first time I really thought, I mean, I started working on the game show and that was taking a lot of my time, but right before COVID, I was like, oh God, I'm so ready, like, to do a special. And I had already been writing a lot and I was actually writing a pilot based on my podcast, which is Don't Call Me Ma'am, talking about getting older in this
Yes.
industry, getting older in the world of social media. You know, it's no longer a midlife crisis, it's a quarter life crisis, it's a 3/4 life crisis. Everybody has it because of the FOMO and everything else. And so I was doing my podcast for a long time. So I wrote like a pilot sitcom based around that. And I was ready. I mean, I really wanted to do it. And then COVID hit. And I obviously, like, even before I got my daughter, like that first year into COVID, almost a year, I I lost my identity because I wasn't working. I worked on like this Fox show as a head writer, but I wasn't doing stand up because nobody was really doing stand up except on Zoom. And I was like, well, who am I? I'm not a mom. I'm not a wife. I'm not this. I'm not that. And so it kind of fucked with me. And then we slowly started getting back in to comedy, doing parking lot shows and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, there it is. And I feel good again. And I had a lot of material about getting older and, you know, a lot of stuff that you did here because that was, you know, I was writing a lot of that stuff during COVID and after that. And then I got my daughter. And then my life was, I remember driving home. She was a month old and I did a show, a parking lot show that I had done. And I did a lot of new material because I was in, you probably don't remember because I think our brains purposely forget, but 0 to 4 months was so traumatic and so terrible. And I hate when everyone's like, oh my God, I love the newborn stage. It was the worst fucking time of my life. And people don't want to admit how horrible it is. It's terrible. 0 to 4 months is like a total, like, what's happening to my life, my body, this blob that can't give you any affection, just cries, eats, poops, wasn't sleeping at night, wasn't sleeping during the day. I was literally going out of my mind. And I went on stage and it was just the worst experience of my life. And even my old stuff I was so disjointed. I'm sure the audience thought it was fine. I got off stage though, and I cried all the way home because what I don't think a lot of people do when they become parents, whether it happens overnight or you have 9 months, you can't ever prepare for really the death the first time you become parents, your first child, it's the death of your old life. I was like, oh, that version of me no longer exists. And I have to mourn that it was gone. And I don't know who this new version of me is going to be. I'm sure she'll be fine, but I don't think we mourn the death of our old lives when we become parents. And it was very hard to do because stand-up had been something that I had done most of my life, and I didn't even feel like I could do it. I slowly started getting back into it with her again. I did a lot of Zoom shows with her, literally feeding her.
She was also, you did this recurring skit where like you were the HR person and
Oh yeah. I love doing that little videos with her. I love doing videos with her. I did lots of videos with her.
yes.
She's so funny, and
Yeah.
it's just, I found a way to come back to it as a mom.
Yes. Yeah.
And
She's your foil in so many of your
really, she really
things.
is. And
Yeah.
then, all of a sudden before I knew it, live shows were back, and
Yeah.
I was doing those and feeling good, and slowly. And then I all of a sudden, my manager, who hadn't seen me perform in a long time, came to see me at West Side Comedy. And it was just a great show. And I did like 15 minutes, which and she was like, Jesus Christ. She's like, she just hasn't seen me live in so long. Definitely not before the pandemic. And maybe one other time. And she was like, holy shit. And I'm like, yeah, I feel really strong right now. And she's like, what are we doing? Why are you not? I'm like, yeah, what are we doing? But I was now back at work, and I was like, all right, I guess we can do a special. Let's do a special. And we had this production company that I was working with on something else. So we just presented it to them. Solaris Entertainment, and they were like, yes, absolutely. We'd love to produce your special. And then they brought National Lampoon in. And all of a sudden I had people that wanted to do it. And it was the right time. Again, it's all about the timing. We think it has to happen at a certain time. And I actually, and now it wouldn't have been the same reasons I was going to do it before. Before I was like, I'm doing it for me. This is going to help my career. And now genuinely, I don't give a shit where it is. I mean, like, I care where it goes, but ultimately it'll, end up on YouTube the way most things do. It's for my daughter. It's for me and my daughter. I did it. I wanted to do it. I did it. And she will see it. And it will be there. It will live on forever. And I have lots of clips that live on forever. But this is like all of it, the culmination of all of it. And it is decades in the making, because I'm decades in the making. And again, yeah, I could have done a special 3 years ago, and I'm sure it would have been great. I think, again, everything happens for a reason. And
absolutely. Yeah.
And
you're walking living proof of like the ups and downs, and how like so much of your suffering is in silence, right? And then you come but you do these shows, you put on a happy face, America's Got Talent, but then there's those devastations behind the scenes, and then you get cut, and all we see is a certain version. And then all of a sudden you come out with this special, and you're at the Ice House, and you're talking about all of this in a funny way, of course, like everybody is laughing. And I just left feeling like I had no idea, and what an amazing person, just rolling with the punches. And I just sort of felt like you are a walking lesson to us all. Like, you are a walking reminder of like, not to let the highs get too high and the lows get too lows, because there's always another one around the corner, right?
I mean, we all have those times, and social media masks a lot of it. You don't realize. I look at I try not to, but it's like you can't help it. The compare and despair game is so strong, especially now with the social media. You constantly look at other people's lives and you think, oh my God, they're just killing it. I want their life or whatever. But behind the scenes, it's a totally different story. I still am like, oh my God, you're killing it, to some people. And they're like, oh God, it's just been like the worst month of my life. I'm like, you can never see that. Truthfully though, like hopefully the moments that most people post, and the moments that I post, especially with Mackenzie, when I was making little videos with her or whatever, those were really happy moments. And that's, I think, a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah.
To live in the moments, and we don't, because we future trip.
Yes, we do.
Constantly thinking about what's coming next and what can I do. When you're in that moment, really enjoying something, it's good to enjoy it, because it's so funny, because I taped that special on Friday, 2 shows, amazing, on like the high of my life on Friday. Sunday, Mackenzie took a giant shit in her bathtub, picked it up with her hand, screamed, threw it, screaming shit everywhere, and I had to wash her in my sink. So that's the hot, like that, and that is like, the ups and downs. You're like, oh my God, like it's everywhere. And now she's traumatized. She won't get in the bath. I'm having like the toughest time with her. It's like, oh my God, it's like, you never really know what's going, because everybody's like, oh my God, you just look like you're making it look so easy. And I'm like, well, I could definitely post the videos of me crying
Yes.
and screaming in my house if you want that, but I don't think anybody wants that.
Yeah.
But when I do post, when I post something and it's adorable and cute, I am in that moment feeling it's adorable and cute.
Yeah.
Next moment could be totally something else, but in
Yeah.
that moment, that's what I'm feeling. And that's
Yeah. And the thing is, future tripping is so pointless because the future will always be out of reach, right? You will never get to the future because the future becomes the present. And so we're always in the present, which was at one point the future. So you just have to stay in the present because each new moment was the future 2 seconds ago and is now here. So yeah. So you did two recordings. I was there for the 7:30 show, and I think the next one was like 9:30 or 10. And then what happens? You look at them both and you decide what jokes worked better in which one.
There's one show that I think we're pulling the majority of and inserting stuff from the other show. So there'll be one that we'll use as the master, and just cut and piece, them together and come up with a great version of it. And then, they'll, they already have some interest in it. There was definitely some industry there on the early show that you were there. So we know people are interested in it. And again, like, that's great that, the game has definitely changed even with that. It won't go to Netflix. So I can tell people that now. And that's only because Netflix isn't buying anymore and they don't pay anything for them. And they'll only take the people that they've really been doing like years and years and years of. Like, we've already, had the meeting with them even before I shot it. So that was never on the table, which is totally fine. Because as Joe Rogan pointed out on his podcast, which changed everyone's mind, because once Joe Rogan says something, it's God, it's law. But it's true. He said everybody should be posting on YouTube because that's where you can monetize the most.
Yeah.
And you can get millions and millions and millions of views. You can repost it and people can, it's true. So it will eventually live there.
Yes.
In clips and in its entirety. But we would love to have it on a streaming platform for sure. And that's the goal. But again, I that's the difference between doing things a little bit older. I'm glad I'm an older parent. To be honest with you, going through it, I don't think I could have done this in my 20s. I mean, I could have, because I would have had a lot of energy, but I've always had a lot of energy. But
you could have done it at any age because you would have had to. I mean, that's just it.
That's
exactly.
Right. Exactly. You would have. Right. But I'm glad I'm doing it now because I don't have the desire to go out and, do all the things I did through my, my 20s, 30s, and early 40s, travel the world. I'm glad I was able to do all of that.
Yes.
While I felt great. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It was, and now it's the perfect time. It's the perfect time for us together. And hopefully the next chapter includes, a man, a husband, a partner. And that's, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. But
that's amazing. It's so if people want to check in on you, to see updates on the special or just see you and Mackenzie as your foil on social media, where is the best way for them to log in and find you?
It's Jodi Miller Comic, Jodi Miller Comic, all one word, and that's across everything. So just look me up and you'll see where I am. I took a couple of weeks off from doing stand-up, and I'm not gonna be doing it as much as I was leading up to the special, but I'm still at the Comedy Store all the time, improv, Ice House again, and now I'm just gonna be working on new material. So I don't have that desire right now, and maybe there will be another special down the road. I don't even think about that now because I'm working on a show. I'm very happy on that show now, and it's perfect timing because I get to see my daughter and I'm not, working the road.
And as Mackenzie reaches new milestones, I'm sure you'll be incorporating those moments into your your comedy as well as school. And then I'm sure when she starts dating, when she's 16, you'll have something to say about that.
Sure, I will. I'm sure. I can't wait for those. I can't wait for those moments. I mean, she's been in school since she was 5 months. I mean, daycare. Thank
Yeah.
God. But yeah, I've got lots of daycare humor. I got lots of all, I mean, there's a lot of stuff yet. But and again, it's not even, that's another thing, people. That's why the special had so many different like chapters or levels or different like acts, is because I'm not just a mom. I'll never just be a mom.
Yeah.
I will still be a woman. I will be a woman who is navigating through the the sea of getting older.
Oh my God, you talk about Botox and all of that stuff, and and it's so funny because no one in LA will admit
I
to
know.
doing
It's
it,
funny.
right?
I didn't the show that you saw, which I did in the second show. I can't believe I didn't do it in the first show, but I actually talk about how celebrities don't talk about the work they've
Yeah.
done, and I really do want that to change,
Yeah.
because it's ridiculous. Like, if my hair, I'm not a natural redhead, and when people find that out, they're like, "Well, who does your hair?" Of course, I'm going to tell you. Well, if someone's like, "You look really good," I'll be like, "Oh my God, I have the best filler, and you should go to my girl." Why wouldn't you share that with someone? It's not taboo to want to look good, and it's not. It's people, like, I'm just doing something that makes me feel good. I'm not doing it for anyone else. But also, I am in this industry, so it is a part of how I look. But
Yeah.
I would do it even if I wasn't in this industry. And I enjoy doing it. And I enjoy getting filler, and I enjoy getting Botox. And I love actually telling people, like, "Oh my God, I go to Blue Medi, and they always have specials, and you should go there. And this woman's so great." I mean, like, I would share that information, and people just want you to think it's good genes. Look at J Lo. I'm like, give me a fucking break. You think that girl gets nothing done to her face? It's also, she's so much money. She can get laser, you know, every week
She
if
can
she.
get it done in the comfort of her own home and no one will ever
Exactly.
know.
It's like ridiculous. You know what I mean? That people, I
Yeah.
just wish more people would be honest about it.
So you're like, I have the best person for Botox and the best mom for adoption.
Exactly. It's the perfect. Oh my God, I can do both. Do you remember the days that people would never, like, people would get boob jobs and like nobody wanted to talk about it? But now everyone's like, if you got a new set of tits, you tell everyone, "Look at my new boobs, look at this." But the second you have no wrinkles, they're like, "Oh no, it's just good genetics." And it's like, I don't think so.
It was so lovely to just check
It
in
was
with you.
so great. Yes, I know.
Yeah. Amazing. Jodi Miller, everyone. Awesome. See you.